This is a correspondence that was sent at the end of October 2024 to an agency that's supposed to help men and women who are being subjected to police brutality. So this woman introduces herself, explaining that she's not trying to be rude by ignoring anyone. She's completely overwhelmed. Completely. If a person from the agency called to speak about the matter, it's better to have an appointment arranged via email or text because, there's severe damage caused by years of brutality and torture and hate and persecution and targeting and fraud and breach of trust, breach of contract. So at this point, boundaries have to be set up because there's no way at this point an unknown number calling is going to get picked up. Because more than likely, there's a mindless monkey on the other end who's premeditated to cause harm, loss, or injury. Because generally speaking, that's what it is. It's better to write down testimony to express what's happened and is happening than to talk with others to see if they can understand the severity of the violence, discrimination, and oppression that has left this woman in a free state as well as with less than nothing. Please see attachment. Please open every link, watch, and read. This matter must involve multiple agencies, the Hate Crimes Unit, Vic PD, BC Attorney Generals, and persons acting as Saanich PD premeditated, then committed hate crimes against this woman and her family, aiding and abetting criminals in possession of our stolen security. Now this woman doesn't even have her wheels that she's had since 1993 because it was completely demolished by armed and dangerous assailants who clearly hate this woman and did cause irreparable harm. So she's not doing well. She doesn't feel valued. She doesn't feel heard. She's not being supported. And basically, there's just no respect shown. Basically, ever, really. So the reason why those agencies were listed is because allegedly, and this is just allegedly, obviously, there's a hate crimes task force. And the task force is made up of multiple members. Royal Canadian Mounted Police co-chair, Canadian Race Relations Foundation co-chair, Victoria Police Department, and the British Columbia Ministry of the Attorney General. Those are allegedly the agencies that would be handling an investigation into hate. And yet it is the Vic PD and the BC Ministry of the Attorney General who are responsible for these hate crimes to begin with. So would it be logical to reach out to agents of agencies who are guilty? So this woman expresses that she just wants to go home, and that obviously just requires action. So here is, well, it was a word. It was a word that was sent over to the first female who decided to pick up the lies, the pathological lies, written on paperwork by persons pretending to be the Saanich PD. And it turns out that the cabal They work off a foundation of presumption and assumption. They presume and assume, hoping beyond all hope that the man or woman they're attacking is not going to rebut or object to their assumptions and their presumptions. Because if nothing is said, then they just move forward with their assumptions and presumptions. So this woman introduces herself, expresses who she is, hereby submit this notice to rebut presumptions and assumptions made by persons acting as the court or any fiction, legal authority in relation to our body, mind, heart, and soul, and the current terrorist hate crimes of persons acting as District of Saanich Police, BC Attorney General, BC Provincial Court, and anybody else who feels that they need to be involved. We will never consent to any presumption of jurisdiction over our body, mind, heart, and soul, or our family's private property unless specifically proven by due process of common law authority in alignment with the following points. Number 1, rebuttal of public record presumption. So we express that we function in a private capacity and declare that no assumption can be made concerning our legal status as a public entity. Any public record that implies otherwise is void without our explicit, informed, written, authorized, autographed consent. Number 2, rebuttal of consent to jurisdiction. Foreign diplomat. So foreign diplomats are never going to consent to the jurisdictions of persons acting as the court or any bar-affiliated entity. Our presence and response to public and legal matters is not to be construed as voluntary submission to persons acting as the court's jurisdiction, but rather as a special. Well, there's a mistake right there. There would never be an appearance. It would be a visitation. Well, that's upsetting. For the sole purpose of challenging these persons' alleged jurisdiction. They need personal and subject matter jurisdiction. And if it's challenged and they can not prove that they would have that authority, then they cannot proceed. Rebuttal of trustee role. We are rejecting the presumption persons acting as the court or province, state acts as trustee over our public affairs and private life. As the woman rightfully identified as the power of attorney, in truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth, executor, trustee, and beneficiary of our corporate, legal, person, commercial, estate, affairs, and life. You see, that's why they demand that you have a representative who then takes over those roles. And they get rich and you get destroyed. And that's their entire game. Rebuttal of corporate personhood. So we are living people, right? Living men and women. We do not consent to be recognized or treated as a corporate person or a legal fiction created by persons acting as the fascist, terrorist, racist state. We were required in our culture and by common law to act in our own sovereign capacity, separate from any corporate or statutory constructs. Rebuttal of statutory jurisdiction. We challenge the applicability of statutory jurisdiction in this matter, as well as all matters past and future. We reserve all rights and claim that we are subject to natural and common law, not statutory legislation, unless proven otherwise by competent evidence of our voluntary, explicit, informed, written, authorized, autographed consent. Consent makes the contract, contract makes the law. Rebuttal of contractual obligations. As a woman who knows there is no valid or voluntary contract with the state or any corporate entity that grants persons acting as the court or public servants jurisdiction over our body, mind, heart, and soul, or our private property, any such claim must be proven with our signed and voluntary, explicit, informed, written, authorized, autographed consent. Wet ink signature, you gotta have it there. And whoever you're dealing with also needs to record their wet ink signature. Because what's happening here with these alleged justices of the peace That's not a wet ink signature. And it has to be. Otherwise, these release orders and all these satanic cult paperwork, they mean nothing. They're basically garbage. It's what you wipe your ass with. Oh, here we go. Rebuttal of custody bailment presumptions. As a living woman who will never consent to being placed in custody or subject to any form of bailment without proven lawful authority by actors of the secular state, we are free living men and women in need of protection. As such, retain with prejudice all common natural law rights to our hated peculiar peoples, freedom, safety, and security. Rebuttal of political status. We are people who will never consent to being identified as a statutory citizen subject to secular state or fascist federal regulations. Our status is that of sovereign men and women, and any assumption otherwise must be proven beyond all reasonable doubt by competent common law proof. Rebuttal of legal representation. We are the people competent to protect our public affairs and private life in this matter or any matter past or future. We reject any presumption that we require legal representation by any member of the bar or other legal fiction entity. Our interests and those of our family are protected solely by our Creator and ourselves, and we retain all common law rights in doing so. Rebuttal of guilt or submission through silence. We reject any assumption that silence or failure to respond constitutes agreement or submission. We reserve our right at any time to rebut any claims made against us or our families and assert our full common law rights to due process, reparations, relief, and remedy without excuse or delay. Rebuttal of guardian. Let me tell you, if you show up down there at any of these Masonic temples, you've granted jurisdiction. You've handed it to them on a silver platter because you've now appeared. The dead are summoning the dead. The living can't be a part of any of this. They couldn't be. Rebuttal of guardian. We reject any claim by persons acting as a secular state to act as our guardian or fiduciary under some sort of fucked up doctrine, the PP doctrine. We are fully competent to manage our own public affairs, and private lives therefore require no such ignorant, incompetent, immoral intervention. Rebuttal of state ownership of a state. Rebuttal of state ownership of a state. We claim full ownership and control over our estate, our real biological property, the estate of the honorable man, including all public, private land, property, and assets, and reject any presumption of secular state ownership or control over ourselves, or anything that we have in our possession, any of the gifts that we were given. Any claim to the contrary of the truth stated must be verified through common law proof. In the common law, you can't lie. Commandment number 9 is you're not going to tell lies. Like, you're just not going to do it. And we know when you're lying. We know instantly when we're being lied to. That's what lights the fuse and generates the inferno. Reservation of inalienable common law rights. We reserve all rights at common law, equity, and natural law, including the right to challenge any presumption and defend against any unlawful jurisdiction over our body, mind, heart, and soul, public affairs, or private life. We do not waive any common law rights or legal protections by submitting this notice. Because it's just pretty obvious that these fucking dogs, these degenerates, are not even recognizing the Constitution anymore. They've completely ignored canon law. They're ignoring international law. No, we're not going to follow any of it. We're not even... So did these dogs take an oath? because the mayors are supposed to, the MLAs are supposed to, the MPs are supposed to. Public servants are supposed to take an oath to uphold the Constitution, which is supposed to be the supreme law of the land. So how are they held accountable when they don't honor their oath? And yet they continue to refer to themselves as honorable. So the whole thing is just a big fucking joke, is what it is. It's just nothing but a joke. Legal maxim, earlier in time, stronger in the law. Those who are first in time are stronger in claim. A legal principle that older laws take precedence over newer ones. Yeah, exactly. Eye for eye, tooth for tooth. Stroke for stroke, fracture for fracture. Laura Wheeler, actor for fascist fiction, war, genocide, guilty provincial immoral agency, BC prosecution. It has been determined you choose to communicate at all material times by argument to be knowingly, willingly, intentionally adversarial. You see right there, that's a violation of the Canadian Constitution, that you have the right, allegedly, to a peaceful association and a peaceful assembly, and yet that's not at all what they're up to, and that's not at all who they are. You are determined by the common law creator of the hated, targeted, persecuted, peculiar people as a terrorist. For starters, you, Laura Wheeler, are in violation of the Anti-Terrorism Act and Section 83.221 Criminal Code of Canada. You, Laura Wheeler, liar, open the following links to learn. This is an honorable woman who rightfully identifies as a private prosecutor, investigator, expert witness, and counsel, and protected foreign, that should say diplomat, who will be sending you and your pathetic profane partners acting as racist fiction Saanich police, a body guilty of war, terrorist, and hate crimes against the Honorable House of Daly, to either a jail cell or a coffin, as your collusion, corruption, and crimes are worthy of immediate applications for made. So are you aware that this is now commonplace for those who require help and assistance, that they're counseled to go and apply for MAID instead of actually being helped, and instead of having their quality of life respected? That's the solution now, and it's happening pretty commonly. Anybody who needs help, that's their solution. They don't want to spend any money helping. They just want you offed. They want you gone. You, Laura Wheeler, were informed via email September the 4th, 2024. This woman who would not be condoning nor consenting to your fraud on the court, malicious prosecution, and hate crimes against my good character and blameless conduct, as you see in the link below. So we've gone through those links. So those links will take us to the documentation that we've gone through and read previously. September the 5th, 2024, you, Wheeler, a warped, wicked wretch, then not only issue an arrest warrant, but also make an obscene, sadistic claim on the record, I'm a woman of unsound mind. Saanich PD criminal sociopath Nick Murray claims you ordered a mental evaluation. So that's what happens when you refuse to hire one of their filthy friends, because they're all in it together. All joined in arrogant, immoral arms. That's the game. That's the game they're playing. Wheeler, your claim and order is frivolous, demeaning, prejudicial, unconstitutional, belligerent, and combative. The truth is, Wheeler, you and the others have no subject matter, personal, nor territorial jurisdiction The truth is, hiring any attorney, solicitor, barrister waives constitutional and common law natural protections, determines humans artificial persons being without a mind, so declared of unsound mind, and thus wards of the court. So seriously, heathen hypocrite Lauren Wheeler, get a grip on reality. So after Victoria was attacked by the Senate SWAT team, in an act of hostage taking and unlawful arrest, kidnapping, unlawful confinement, torture, lo and behold, Victoria had absolutely no idea that the person appointed as an assistant would be present. On November the 21st, because Victoria asked to speak to whoever was impersonating the public. And Victoria was told that Victoria would not be speaking to the person impersonating the public. Victoria found that extremely strange and extremely odd, because Victoria is not going to put up with a monkey in the middle. It is a command that you don't turn to mediums, and that's what that is. So then all of a sudden, Victoria is informed that there is someone who needs to speak to her, referring to itself as counsel. Oh, okay. So there is the appointed assistant. And apparently, in a private conversation, which there's no way it could be private because it's like a Zoom call, Victoria is informed by this assistant that there's going to be a trial. And yet this individual has no idea what's going on, has never spoken to Victoria, and yet has already determined there is going to be a trial. Then later on, 2 other females join in. One impersonating a judge, the other impersonating the public, and then, of course, there's Victoria's assistant there. One of the 2 females, not the one impersonating the judge, claims that Victoria says this is all bullshit. Really? So now you're going to take something this righteous woman has to say and you're going to take it out of context so you can incite hatred? Because this is not a private conversation, right? This is on the record. This is a public service, and you are to provide these hearings. Like, the public should have access to what you're doing here, and yet this is all done privately. And then Victoria hears her assistant say to the person impersonating the judge, "I've asked for disclosure and have not received it as of yet." So this is like 6 weeks after this assistant has been appointed. The persons impersonating the public have yet to hand over what this is all fucking about. And so how is it that the assistant appointed to a foreign diplomat has already determined that there's going to be a trial if it hasn't even received a disclosure? So basically the assistant tattletales on its friend pretending to be the public to this other female impersonating a judge. I mean, it's literally like fucking kindergarten. The whole thing is just fucking sick from the word go. So, of course, Victoria's sitting there thinking, right, so the gut instinct about the assistant was right on the money. Victoria did not pick up phone calls from that assistant. Victoria didn't have any engagement with that assistant. Victoria is not required to. Victoria is the woman in charge of the matter. Victoria is the principal of the matter, and all three of those females are agents. So it would be Victoria who would be determining whether or not there would be a trial or not. Well, you had to be there. You just fucking had to hear this. And then the female impersonating the judge decides that if Victoria still refuses to consent to this malicious prosecution, they're going to charge Victoria $500. Because the whole fucking thing is about generating revenue. They're working on their pensions. And again, all fucking three of these females have not a fucking clue what's actually going on here. But they're subjecting a righteous woman, a foreign diplomat, to their absolute fucking psychotic stupidity. So during the private conversation with the assistant claims that Victoria will only have constitutional rights if she is represented. Now Victoria's sitting there thinking to herself, well, I know that's not true. So already you've proven yourself to be dishonest, already. So once we know we can't trust you, we don't need you. And that's exactly how we are. That's an automatic door slam. You just lied. Because we knew absolutely that by having a representative, you have no rights at all. All your rights fucking fly out the window. Just beyond the fucking sickness. Question for Laura Wheeler. You have to answer this question. Am I a sovereign woman your property? You better realize we are the most intelligent people. You have made the grave mistake of attacking, so read what we have to say about you, your waste of time and evil effort. So again, we've already gone through that document. I'm not going to subject anybody else who's kind enough to listen and be invested in this war to go through that again. So the Nuremberg Code, Article 6, Section 1, any preventative, diagnostic, or therapeutic medical intervention is only to be carried out with the prior free and informed consent of the person concerned based on adequate information. The consent should, where appropriate, be express and may be withdrawn by the person at any time and for any reason without advantage or prejudice. Article 6, Section 3, in no case should a collective community agree or the consent of a community leader or other authority substitute for an individual's informed consent. But they're trying to force you into a psychological assessment with one of their paid fucking parasites. And whatever they tell the parasite to say is exactly what the parasite will be saying about the individual that about the man or woman that they're in process of completely destroying. Now, Victoria went through this when her son was kidnapped. It was the same satanic ritual abuse. The same process. All preventative, diagnostic, and therapeutic medical intervention applies. All judicial, administrative, executive, governor, or even legislature, legal regulations, authority, community leader, and or a collective community agreement is not substitute for consent of a man or a woman. There can be no disadvantages nor prejudice for not consenting. This includes and is not limited to unwanted psychiatric treatments for courts, forensic psychiatry, lockdowns, which literally only occurs in jails and prisons, vaccines and mandatory testing for any common activity in business. These all fit the categories of medical intervention documented by the Nuremberg Code. October the 6th, 2024, confirmed by the appointed assistant. Well, they're not listening, nor respecting the common law process of our people, an identifiable group in need of protection. Because Jesus called it, and he called it right. You will be hated. You're going to be hated. Like, you just need to get a grip on that right now, because this is going to be your entire life to be hated. So here is a text message, and here we have it spoken that it's written that you have a warrant. Okay, so wait a minute here. So if Victoria has already provided lawful reasons of why she will not be complying, and she has provided those reasons before the 5th of September, when she was being forced to attend a Masonic ritual, why would there be a warrant issued? How could there be a warrant issued? And you have to attend the courthouse to deal with it? Well, no, this is all an administrative process. Victoria is not going to avail herself to a Masonic temple or the sadistic, sociopathic energy surrounding the building and inside the building. Remember, we are empaths. We are highly sensitive men and women. Victoria's been in that building countless number of times. Besides the fact that the employees who work in that building are violent. So Victoria would not feel safe to do such. So again, like, it's not listening. And there we have, well, I'm not clicking a random YouTube link. You don't have to use my help if you don't want it. Well, it's not random. Like, why would I do that? There's false charges. You don't want to hear that? You don't want to hear what's actually going on here? You're just, because you're blind and you're deaf. So this is why there can be no relationship between the living and the dead. Presumption of summons is that by custom a summons unrebutted stands. Therefore, one who attends court is presumed to accept a position, defendant, juror, witness, and jurisdiction of persons acting as the court. Attendance to court is usually invitation by summons or or a warrant, unless the summons is rejected and returned with a copy of the rejection filed prior to choosing to visit or attend. Jurisdiction and position as the accused and the existence of guilt stands. And presumption of custody. By custom, a summons or a warrant for arrest unrebutted stands, and therefore one who attends court is presumed to be a thing, an entity, therefore liable to be detained in custody by persons acting as custodians. Court government actors possess the dead legal fiction person that corporate government agent rules and regulations are written for. Custodians may only legally hold custody of property and things, not flesh and blood, living men and women. Unless this presumption is openly challenged by rejection of summons and or warrant, the presumption stands. And we, the people, are a thing treated as property, therefore legally able to be kept unlawfully in custody by custodians. So this appointed assistant provided evil instructions to intentionally endanger this woman's health, welfare, and safety by claiming that she needs to attend a courthouse to deal with it. An unwarranted warrant. An unwarranted, unconstitutional, hate-fueled warrant. Persons acting as the court, their courthouses are administrative, not lawfully judicial. So again, right, Victoria has now provided clear, concise, as the principal, that's her job, to tell the agent what to do, and the agent has refused. So question number 1 for the female who was impersonating the judge in August of 2024. Am I your property? Again, a question for that same female. Why did you claim on the record we, being sovereign, would represent ourselves? We can't. That's ridiculous. Question. Why did you try to trick and deceive a sovereign woman into joinder with the artificial person, corporation, commercial entity to gain fraudulent, void on its face, personal and subject matter jurisdiction? Jurisdiction over a defendant requires both personal and subject matter jurisdiction. The statutory provision merely codifies the well-established principle that the courts acquire authority to adjudicate a matter when they have both subject matter and in personam jurisdiction. Therefore, if the court has jurisdiction of the parties and subject matter, its actions are not void no matter how erroneous they may be. On the other hand, judicial action without jurisdiction is void. Where the court is without jurisdiction, it has no authority to do anything other than dismiss the case. Boy, oh boy, you better understand the first part of that sentence. Because that is sick beyond sick. So if no rebutting of assumptions and presumptions that they rule on are provided, and they gain jurisdiction, and you lose everything, well, who's it on? Let those who can be deceived is a law maxim. So question for that female acting as impersonating the judge. Are we the sovereigns? Are we foreign diplomats your slave or your subject? Another question for not only the female impersonating the judge, but the female impersonating the public. Do you have any first-hand knowledge of the subject matter pertaining to 2 false charges fabricated by racist criminal terrorist body Saanich Police Department? Well, we all know the answer to that question. That is no. It's no. So now you've lost not only subject matter jurisdiction, but personal jurisdiction, because you need to both have first-hand knowledge of what's going on. Otherwise, you're accepting evidence you can't accept. It's hearsay evidence. Okay, so the question for the two of them is, so who's moving the court? Well, who's moving it? Who is claiming to be moving this court without jurisdiction, without authority, with no first-hand knowledge of what's going on here? Civil Rights Protection Act. Prohibited Act. Prohibited Act is actionable. In this act, Prohibited Act means any conduct or communication by a person that has, as its purpose, interference with the civil rights of a person or class of persons by promoting hatred or contempt of a person or class of persons, or the superiority or inferiority of a person or class of persons in comparison with another or others, on the basis of color, race, religion, ethnic origin, or place of origin. So they have violated the Civil Rights Protection Act. They're in complete violation of the act. So question for the two females. Are you aware attempting to deflect from their fault beyond reasonable doubt of conspiracy to commit murder, dishonorable manner of District of Saanich, and the chief of police premeditated and carried out their vicious crimes to protect known criminals? Well, that's why they're there. That's why they're there on the 29th of August. So now we've got, well, that's what, a liar is a murderer. That's the whole intention of telling a lie. You're murdering someone. You're murdering their character, you're murdering their reputation, you're murdering their quality of life. It's a complete destruction. So some examples of the offense of conspiracy to commit murder may include 3 monkeys formulate a plan to murder someone, and although intend on murdering someone, take steps to plan and try to make the circumstances appear to be an accident. 4 monkeys conspire to murder someone and carefully plan the crime, with each person participating. So here's a question for the female impersonating the public, acting as the BC prosecution. What is the personal identification of males and or females acting as criminal terrorist organ Saanich PD guilty beyond reasonable doubt of lying about this woman's good conduct and blameless character? So who's made the claims? They need to be identified. Who lied? Who's telling lies? Because that's why we've got the lie of criminal harassment. That's why we've got the lie of willfully resisting or obstructing. Those are lies. That has no basis in truth at all. You see what I mean about this? A clerk of the court? You see how that's not a wet ink signature? This is all an administrative process. It's got nothing to do with common law or justice at all. Deceit with words. Represent, right? The liar represents the living as the dead. Civil it's Roman, like it's the Roman cult. Yet it doesn't stand to being civil. The court's moving under the rules of civil procedure. Well, so it's a Roman reprobate procedure. It's a legal procedure. So that's the wrong jurisdiction. Question for the female impersonating the public in August. Are you cognizant false charges laid by racist tyrants and fascists acting as Saanich PD in laughable, ridiculous conditions in attempt to keep this woman from our security? The land, the home that's been stolen is indictable crime known as coercive control, violent assault with a deadly weapon. Well, that's what it is, right? Coercive control is an act or a pattern of acts of assault, threats, humiliation, and intimidation, or other abuse that is caused to harm, punish, or frighten. This controlling behavior is designed to make the victim dependent by isolating them from support, exploiting, depriving, regulating their everyday behavior. Coercive control creates invisible chains and a sense of fear that pervades all elements of the victim's life. It works to limit their cultural rights by depriving them of their right to freedom and reducing their ability for action. Well, that's why the sociopath and a couple of other cowards are back yesterday around 2 o'clock. That's what they're doing. Right? The degenerates, they're going to double down. So here's a question for the female impersonating the public. Are you aware members of Saanich PD knew the Honorable House of Daly was being robbed by crimes of fraud on the court and did nothing to stop the violent hate crimes, protect our land, protect our security, protect our lives and our interest, private property? See page 123 of the following deposition and testimony, January 2020. Francisco Avails, informed of crime in progress, instead of starting an investigation, chose to gaslight, violate, torture, kidnap, to unlawfully confine the victim. And there's the police file number. So the real estate magnate who hand-delivered an eviction notice for the homeowner to leave the home she'd lived in for close to 2 decades in less than 14 days with no money to do so, called the Saanich PD and lied that this woman was going to kill herself. And then they came to do a welfare check. And the moral is that you never speak to the pigs. You don't ever invite the pigs in, and you don't ever speak to the pigs, because they're not there to help. They're there to escalate the situation and justify why they have made contact. So Victoria was viciously, violently, verbally violated and then kidnapped. Taken to the loony bin, right? And held for I don't know, was that like, well, it was hours. There was no sleeping, there was no food, there was no water, there was no bed to sleep in. And then Victoria was forced to speak to some fucking reprobate with some letters after its name before she could go back to her her security that she was going to be losing in less than a couple of weeks. And the female that drove Victoria back to where she was kidnapped from walks Victoria to the door and says to her, "If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to call us." It felt like a 2x4 upside the head. I'm not even kidding. Not even kidding. Why would you say something like that? Like, you'd be the last motherfuckers we'd be calling if we needed anything. Because all you can do is be violent and abusive. But that's what we heard. Yeah. Police officer duties. Common law duties. No, they don't follow any of that. They don't need to. They're never going to be held to account if they don't. Championing equity and inclusion. Oh, really? No, that's not true either. What else? This is all propaganda. All the websites, all the bullshit that they put out into the public, that's all propaganda. It has no basis in reality at all. It's their illusion that they live in, so they can justify their paychecks and their flex days and their pension. This is what they need to do. BC Law Enforcement Diversity Network. We don't think so. Nice try, though. So here are continuous calls from Murray. Continuous calls. Criminal harassment. Right? Coercive control. And yeah, it's been going on for years. The principles of this hate crime. Murdoch and Duthie have oppositional defiant disorder, therefore unfit to continue in roles of public service. So they're disordered, like they're not right in the head. You've got anger and irritability. You've got argumentative and defiant. So if we then speak the truth and provide proof of claim, and then you get argumentative and defiant, you are mentally ill. You need medication. You need to be diagnosed. You need to be on a psychiatric hold. And you need to be assessed. And you need to lose your job. And vindictiveness, well, that's why they're there at the end of August. Retaliation. Because, we went through the criminal code, we pointed out all the crimes they were committing. Oh, Canadian Race Relations Foundation. Oh, really? Oh, so whereas Canada, as a party to the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination, has resolved to adopt all necessary measures for speedily eliminating racial discrimination in all its forms and manifestations, whereas the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms provides that every individual is equal before and under the law and has the right to equal protection and equal benefit of the law without discrimination, whereas the Constitution of Canada recognizes the importance of preserving and enhancing the multicultural heritage of Canadians and recognizes rights of the Aboriginal peoples of Canada, whereas the Canadian Multiculturalism Act provides that it is the policy of the Government of Canada to promote the full and equitable participation of individuals and communities of all origins in the continuing evolution and shaping of all aspects of Canadian society and to assist them in the elimination of any barrier to such participation. Well, there we go. Now we know that words mean nothing and actions are what's important, because that's all a bunch of fucking bullshit. It really is. I mean, you can write all this fucking shit down that you want. It's an illusion. It's a joke. The plots of the wicked against the good shall not be fully successful, while the wicked, falling under penal evil, find no help. Lay not wait. Do him no injury either by subtle or secret devices, or, as it follows, by manifest violence against the dwelling of the righteous, against their people, their family, their possessions. But hey, they're fucking all about it, aren't they? So foreign diplomats are excluded from suit because consent makes the contract, contract makes the law. Court is for contract disputes, and they have to show a contract that you agree to their illusions, which are the statutes. The living men and women can do no wrong, or righteous men and women certainly are not. Side note, but the public servants can do wrong. Means you operate peacefully, mindfully, and reasonably. When you injure someone, you enter yourself into contract with the one you wronged until you either die or settle the matter. If you wrong someone and refuse to settle, you cease being sovereign and continue forward as a wrongdoer until you die or settle. So there was a CBC investigative report done, and apparently, like years ago, like in 2020, true owners of vintage vehicles were stolen by fraudsters. Now, somebody finally came forward and said something. And this is the process. Now, Victoria has attempted to work this exact same process repeatedly since November 2021. Dozens of cars seized. Dozens have been caught up in a sprawling OPP investigation involving more than 200 vintage automobiles. It was sparked by a December 2023 complaint from one guy who accused his business partner of stealing them. The accused is alleged to have transferred the titles into his own name over a 5-year period at Service Ontario outlets via forged documents, with many of the vehicles then sold to unsuspecting customers. In late May, the OPP charged 2 men with theft, fraud, and forgery. Investigators have been busy ever since repossessing the stolen property from people's garages and driveways. The police arrived at this guy's family farm looking for an orange 1972 Chevy pickup, a truck he'd owned for more than 4 years. They handed me a letter that basically said if I didn't hand it over, I could be charged with possession of stolen goods. So I didn't have much choice but to let them take it. So exactly the same thing has happened to my family. But it was land and a security and, yes, a house car. Well, now both of them are gone. But why is it different when this woman works the same process? Why is this woman then, like, what is going on here? Because fraud on the court, November 2018, Daniel Carroll and Graham Mack of Kamloops, BC, solicitors for RICO, CIBC, illegally transfer land title of interest private property, out of security, committing crimes of forging documents, fraud, and theft over $5,000. The stolen land is being illegally used by frauds and criminals who refuse to return the stolen property to the true owner as counseled by criminals doing business as a district of Saanich. Daniel Carroll stole the 2006 Ford Focus belonging to the owner. Just like these Mr. Bradshaw and Mr. LeBlanc. And so that would be the process, right? That you hand over the letter, you hand over the proof of claim to the ones who are in possession of the stolen property, and then they return the stolen property. So that should have happened back in December of 2021. And now we're in 2025, and look what this innocent woman has had to go through, had to endure, had to survive. How is that fair? Is that fair? Is that following any of this fucking garbage that they've got written down there on their websites? I mean, is it? Is that championing equality and inclusion? Sorry, equity. Pardon me, I'm so tired. So tired. Okay, so they're supposed to be making up, the public safety agencies are committed to equity, inclusion, and belonging. No, that's not true. Oh, so you discuss principles and practices of authentic community engagement, share programming models and training resources, all towards the goal of promoting community trust and safety? No, we don't see that happening either. Police Act, though there's an act. Prevent crime. Are you supposed to be preventing crime? Maintain law and order in this municipality? Well, that's not what you were doing on August the 29th of 2024. You were neither maintaining law or maintaining order. You were there to disturb the peace of anybody within ear or eye shot of that location. Because you're obsessed with this woman. You're obsessed with this woman. Right? Coercive control, that's what they're doing. They just don't care. That was a hate crime that you committed. How did we get to this point? How did we even get this far? So bribery and corruption have an impact. Increases the price of everything. So you contact your local police if you know about an act of corruption that involves businesses, municipal and provincial government employees, municipal or provincial government institution. Okay, so let's just think about this. Let's wrap our very, very sharp minds around this. If you know about municipal and provincial employees and institutions involved in corruption, the last place you're going to want to contact is the local police. Because their job is to protect their buddies. So how does this make any sense? And this is coming out of an RCMP website? Oh, so, well, that's what they're up to. That is what it is. I mean, legally, their actions are, well, they're publicly inciting and willfully promoting hatred against an innocent woman that they want to see gone from here. They don't want her voice here. They don't want her to say anything because they're dangerous offenders. Serious personal injury offense. Well, that's what's happening. An indictable offense other than high treason, first-degree murder, or second-degree murder involving the use or attempt use of violence against anyone, conduct endangering or likely to endanger the life or safety of others, or inflicting or likely to inflict severe psychological damage, for which the offender may be sentenced to imprisonment for 10 years or more. So the psychological damage that this woman has been caused is irreparable. It's irreparable. That's why this woman fought for an injunction and was told to go fuck herself by two females, both members of the bar, with both they're both card-carrying criminals. Once an offender has been convicted of a serious personal injury offense, so what do we have here? Well, right, it's a gang stalking kind of a deal. So survival mode, you just wiped right out. And yet there's this paradox of feeling guilt and shame of not being able to really do what you know that you have to be doing because you're so exhausted. But anytime you try to do the right thing, I mean, the violence just gets ramped up. So does the coercive control. They don't want you to ask for help. Why would you want to do that? You know, it's oppression. Your rights supersede all acts and statutes. All statutory legislation is enforced by consent, fraud, coercion, or extortion. All statutory acts are invalid due to lack of consideration of contract. All loans and mortgages are invalid and the liability of the issuer if the contract has only one signature. So they force you to sign the offer of contract so you can be released. They force you to sign it. You're the only man or woman with who's actually signed. So it's fraud from the beginning. I mean, how do they fucking manage just to move forward? And yet look what's still happening. Oh, so apparently as a victim, you have the right to courtesy and respect? All justice system personnel must treat victims with courtesy and respect and must not discriminate against victims on the basis of race, color, ancestry, place of origin, religion, marital status, family status, physical or mental disability, gender, sexual orientation, political belief, or age. Now, why would you put place of origin in there? Or ancestry? So that then includes our people. And yet look what's going on. It's just not okay. Well, see, so they're going to give you some paperwork for notice of seizure, and yet that's unconstitutional. It's unwarranted. But there we have proof, though, that this woman is not. Oh, so now you're in possession of stolen goods, and now you're going to traffic those stolen goods. And you've got the signature of the little arrogant maggot who attended a forced eviction during a ban on forced evictions. So there it is. So here's what the problem is. This is why they've retaliated, because Victoria has gone through the Criminal Code of Canada, and she's done the who, what, when, where, and why, which is exactly what you need to prove a crime. The who, what, when, where, and why. So we have all of that information available. And here, we know who, what, when, where, and why. We know there's been 2 fraudulent mortgages. We know who. We know when. We know why. Right? So Halfam Holdings, right? So that residential property, that security is now commercial. So Dean Murdoch can collect more property tax on the property. Because Dean Murdoch is more than likely a shareholder in the private for-profit District of Saanich. Assignment of rents, right? Declared value, $860,000 on a property that my partner and I paid for in full, not once but twice. Once when we purchased it, and then again when he passed. Plus we had paid all that money in interest for 17 years. Well, there it is. So she has the right pursuant to Section 42, but there's a warrant for her arrest. Again. Because they need to cover this up. And so they need to shut her up. So trespassing. The BC Trespass Act. So they've been told to leave, but they're still there. So it's apparently 6 months in jail or a fine of $2,000. The Trespass Act provides that a person can be prosecuted for trespass if the police, conservation officer, and Crown Counsel are willing. If police and Crown Counsel are not willing to lay charges, then one can lay up private information and prosecute the charge. Well, there's the Trespass Act right there. So they're bullies, right? They're obstructing a peace officer. Victoria rightfully identifies as a peace officer. So who's really obstructing who? Because on August the 29th, actually, the truth is, it was Nick Murray, it was Mike Walsh, and over a dozen other high-risk offenders who did commit the offense of willfully resisting and obstructing a peace officer. That's the truth. That's the truth of the matter. And yet this woman is the one who's charged. So a peace officer may disclose to any woman any information in a record kept under Section 114 court records or 115 police records that is necessary to disclose in the conduct of the investigation of an offense. Because what happens is they refuse to be open, transparent, and accountable. So what they do is they just put up roadblock after roadblock and fucking, the reprobate red tape where they want you to fucking FOI applications and all this other fucking bullshit garbage. And yet the Criminal Code of Canada, Section 125, makes it crystal clear. If you require that information because you're doing a forensic investigation, they have to hand it over. But you won't be treated kindly, and you won't be treated with respect, and you won't be treated with empathy. That Dean Murdoch stands charged that between the 12th day of July 2024 up to the current date, at or near District of Saanich, BC, being held an official mayor did commit fraud, breach of trust in connection with the duties of his office by refusing emergency necessaries of life, service, and protection to the woman known as the one you listen to, contrary to Section 122 of the Criminal Code. That Dean Duthie stands charged that between the 1st day of February 2021 and up to the current date at or near District of Saanich, BC, he, being an official chief constable, did commit fraud, breach of trust in connection with the duties of his office by refusing emergency necessaries of life, service, and protection to a foreign diplomat known as Victoria, contrary to Section 122 of the Criminal Code. Section 21. Everyone who is a party to an offense who actually commits it does or omits to do anything for the purpose of aiding any person to commit it or abets any person in committing it. So Victoria, there's no way Victoria could possibly be forced to avail herself to a warrant for arrest. She can't. She's then in violation of Section 21 of the Criminal Code of Canada. How can you force a righteous woman, a foreign diplomat, to be party and parcel to indictable crime? How? How is that happening? Is that because Victoria is dealing with mindless, malicious monkeys with no hope or future? Is that what's going on here? Police misconduct, inappropriate conduct, and illegal actions taken by persons impersonating police officers in connection with their official duties. Police misconduct, theft, false arrest, deliberate indifference to serious medical needs, or a substantial risk of harm to a person. Well, a person's a thing. Oh, thank you so much for your kind words, thoughts, and words. The Saanich Police Department is committed to our community and will continue to provide the highest levels of professional service that helps all people feel safe. Is that right? Is that right? So Mr. Duthie was contacted, and Mr. Duthie, being an agent, would then be informed by the principal of his duty So this is August the 22nd, 2024, that it was to have arranged a locksmith to be at the stolen property, to have it returned to the true owner, the beneficiary. And instead, chose to set up a SWAT team sting because the woman that he hates has said something. So he was informed to call public servants acting as the sheriff's service to locate the stolen house car. There's the number right there. Be aware, Murdoch and Duthie, along with the underlings acting as provincial municipal victim services. This is the woman with sole authority to provide directions to restore all property robbed by violence and fraud. You public servants will not be receiving a court order from blind leading the blind beast benchers, as they are them who are behind these arrogant abomination acts of public incitement and willful promotion of hatred to commit genocide upon the honorable people who you clearly want to destroy. Micah and the Psalms, calling it before it even happens. How is that possible? Canadians are liars and their tongues speak deceitfully. They're rich and violent. Canadians are so used to lying that their tongues can no longer tell the truth. Rich Canadians are full of you know what. Their mouths are for evil and harness, their tongues to deceit. Their mouths are evil. Their mouths are filled with wickedness. And their tongues are toxic. Well, it's an open grave, isn't it? Numbers 5:7, they shall confess their evil. They shall not continue in the denial of guilt, but give glory to the truth and take shame to themselves by acknowledging it. The principle, that's interesting. That is the thing the liars took away, or what is equivalent to it, and add both as compensation to the injured people for want of their goods so long, and as a penalty upon the injurious dealer to discourage others from such attempts. Common law. It's perfect. You don't add, you don't subtract from it. The victim has to be made whole at all material times. So this is the reason Victoria does all this work. She puts her heart and soul into everything. She has to point out their errors. If she does not, she is aiding and abetting. If she does not, she has the blood of malicious, mindless monkeys on her beautiful, capable hands. And this is why they've lost their minds. This is why. Yeah. How do you like them apples?